Let's do this. Subscribe to the channel. Yeah, sit around, sit around, sit around, sit around, sit around, sit around, sit around. Let me do this, let me do this. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I go by the name of GODGOTHAM and welcome back to the channel. The second channel.
Alright, y'all, look at the thumbnail. Y'all see the title. Today we got How to Beat Anime, and this is How to Beat the Gods in House Complexity. Never saw this. I don't know what it's about, but anyway, I'm here for it all. Oh, how your day been? Y'all been doing good? I've been doing swell. So you already know link is going to be down in the description below. Like, comment, subscribe before the do, man. No more slogan, no more slugging, no more slugging. I'm the greatest, and the worst. I am. God, I got to give you that one.
Suddenly started dying and turning into plants, what would you do? You're trapped on this island full of murderers and godlike creatures, and it's only a matter of time before your turn to die comes. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the fish gods in Housing Complex C. These people have no idea that everyone on this island is going to die, and it's not going to be due to old age. Kimmy here is just your regular old little girl living in a small town, and more specifically within a housing complex full of senior citizens. She complains that it's hot as hell and asks if they can have some shaved ice to cool off. So they take her down to the town's old basement and begin looking for their old ice machine, but find something else instead. And Kimmy suddenly finds the rotten corpse of an old dog, and also discovers a rock with a creepy mark on it, not realizing that this rock will unleash something horrifying. Old man Taka here then realizes that this storeroom was built on an unexplored ancient cave, and now thinks that this prehistoric rock could be worth a lot of money. He goes to tell his friends that he thinks that this rock belongs to an ancient civilization that used to live on this island, and tells everyone that they should start exploring this island in case there is even more treasure to be found. But he'll soon regret digging any further. Suddenly this old lady comes by.
I wouldn't do it. I'll just let it be, bro. You know nothing. I'm telling you, could be some curse or something. Nah, it better left this being there, bro, untouched. Just saying.
And tells them that new immigrant workers have just moved onto the island to work and will live at the same apartment as everyone else while they're here.
Nah, I don't trust them. I don't trust them.
As the new residents move in, this lady bumps into some of the new arrivals. They introduce themselves as Yuri and Yuri's mom. She welcomes them but warns these two about her creepy son who likes to draw scary pictures and leave them all over town. She says that her creepy son is harmless, but these two have no idea that this kid will set off a series of horrifying events. Later that night, Kimi is playing on the roof of her apartment when she notices something sinister in the forest looking right at her. But suddenly, Yuri pops by and introduces herself, and the two agree to become friends. Wanting to show off, Kimi decides to show Yuri the scary basement that she discovered earlier, and the
Why, bro?
two head down there and begin exploring, but that's when they notice a secret door open up. Curious, the two head inside and suddenly notice horrifying drawings stuck all over the walls. Yuri then recognizes the drawings and thinks that it may belong to the creepy kid that she was warned about from earlier, and the two quickly head back home. The next day, some villagers begin to notice piles of dead fish near the apartment, and they begin to freak out and try to hide it from old lady landlord. Meanwhile, Kimi leaves her apartment and she heads down this hallway, but notices that one of her neighbor's doors is half open. Curious, she goes inside to check it out, and she suddenly sees the horrifying corpse of a creepy kid covered in moss. Okay, this is crazy and gross, because this kid not only was creepy as hell, but was essentially a shut-in and never left his room. Kimi and Yuri discovering his horrifying drawings all over those walls means that he really wasn't that much of a shut-in. However, him almost never leaving his room made him either the hardest or easiest target in the world, depending on if the mother was home when his murder happened. But what doesn't make sense is why the killer didn't try to kill Creepy Kid down in the creepy basement where he left his drawings, because the killer would have had to keep tabs on Creepy Kid before killing him, and would have likely already known about his hangout spot down in the basement, as this would have likely made a much better spot to kill him, and would have been way less risky. The killer committing these murders in the apartment itself means that this murderer has a serious set of balls and is super confident about their ability ability to get away safe and sound, and likely means that the killer is someone that can travel unseen through this building and also has a reason to travel to various floors with a seemingly non-threatening look about them in order to be able to blend in. The hard part is that everyone is staying in the same building here, including those immigrant workers, which means everybody is already in close proximity with one another, and they pass by each other on a repeated basis. This means that the killer is not likely who we think it is, and these people can't afford to get distracted by pointing fingers towards the easiest target. The body covered in moss, however, is another mystery, and something that doesn't make sense, because moss in general is a plant that likes to grow on hard, porous surfaces, like stone or wood, where it finds enough moisture and mineral nutrients. The fact is, a dead human body is not a good environment for moss to grow, due to all the organic compounds of water in the tissue that encourages bacterial growth. This makes the human body basically toxic for plants, and the fact that the corpse was entirely covered in moss means that there's no normal way that moss could have formed there naturally, as in generally it takes at least 6 weeks up to
Someone must have put something there.
2 years for moss to begin thriving on a surface. This means that it could not have formed overnight to that extent, because what Kimmy is seeing is just not humanly possible. I would also begin looking into the moss and what it could represent, as in various cultures have different concepts about plants, and they can represent different symbols. Understanding the reasoning behind why the moss is there in the first place could take us one step closer to figuring out what kind of statement the murderer is trying to make, and the better we can understand him, the better we'll be able to figure out what all of this means and what the killer plans to do next. News about the dead kid's corpse begins to spread all over, and all the neighbors begin to start to freak out.
Y'all been saying, what about the mother? What the mother at?
And word gets out that the dead kid's family has suddenly disappeared.
Oh.
Taka then meets with his friend.
I was thinking, what the mother at? Like, oh, all of a sudden she just disappeared. God up. Strange, bro. Could be an inside job.
Friends and finds out that the locals on the island have started to suspect that one of the immigrant workers may have kidnapped the dead boy's parents, and everyone starts to become a little bit paranoid. Later, Kimmy heads over to play with Yuri, as Yuri's mom offers to help her make the iced dessert for the apartment party later, but out of certain ingredients. Kimmy talks to Taka, and he asks their new neighbors if they have any ingredients that they could borrow. Agreeing to help, the immigrant workers offer to make the syrup for the rest of the apartment party, not realizing that this event will turn into a horrifying day. Excited for the party, Kimmy begins singing folklore songs about the island, but she messes up the lyrics so bad, and Yuri begins to get really annoyed. Taka then clarifies what the ancient song is really about, and mentions that thousands of years ago, an ancient power was delivered to this island at a sacred site somewhere on the mountain, and this power was delivered by an ancient sea god named Kuzululu. This god and his people eventually settled on the island and began serving the locals and the king of the land. Taka suspects that according to this ancient song, him and Kimmy's island ancestors were once part of an ancient civilization from under the sea. Taka chuckles at the island story, but he will soon regret ever talking to these girls. He continues blathering on, but Yuri gets really bored and runs off, and Kimmy and Taka suddenly bump into one of the island's buffest immigrants, Boulder Shoulder Guy, and they see him freak out over this moss plant, and he says that where he comes from, he's never seen any plant as beautiful as this one, while at the same time really creepy and adorable. Suddenly Taka realizes that the rock that he found in the basement may belong to the ancient Kuzululu people, and he decides to go do some more research, and Boulder Shoulder Guy notices the rock in Taka's hands. Later that night, the neighbors notice even more dead fish all around the building, and they begin to think that something terrifying is happening. Scared, Yuri's mother offers to let the locals use her security cameras that she set up near her apartment, and everybody tries to figure out who's leaving behind all of these dead fish. Later, Taka and his friends show up at Boulder Shoulder Guy's house and tell him that they've caught him on camera and blame him for all the fishiness that's been going on. But that's when they find out something shocking. Boulder Shoulder Guy—
maybe he was trying to use the fish to lure the enemy or whatever. Well, let me shut up. Let go.
Guy confesses about what he did last night, but he's not the one that left them. He was the one that was cleaning them up. He saw a pile of animal corpses right outside of Kimmy's apartment, revealing to Taka that he was just cleaning up the mess and told them where to go to prove his story right. Finding out that he's telling the truth, the gang realizes that someone or something else is causing all of this. Boulder Shoulder Guy then agrees to stay in for the night, and the group decides about what to do next. This dude wearing red pants then agrees to stay awake and provide the night watch. Red Pants Guy sets out to start the night shift, leaving Taka and his friends. He heads up these apartment stairs, but he suddenly hears a strange noise. Following the sound, he reaches this floor, just as he gets brutally murdered. The next day, the iced dessert party is about to begin, and Kimmy and Yuri and Taka stop by Boulder Shoulder Guy's house to pick up the syrup for the party. Kimmy then quickly has a taste of the syrup, and the three head downstairs. Moments later, everyone begins celebrating, and Kimmy has another scoop of the iced dessert. But that's when she notices that it now suddenly tastes disgusting. Just then, Taka and his friends find another pile of dead fishes. Realizing that Red Pants Guy from last night is nowhere to be found, scared for their friend, this guy rushes off to go find Red Pants Guy. Breaking into his apartment, he discovers that his friend's corpse is also covered in red moss. And now Boulder Shoulder Guy and everyone else at the party begins to realize that something else is off about the iced dessert. And Taka suddenly discovers an animal head floating inside of the syrup. That's so gross. Ugh, okay, this is terrifyingly disgusting, because right now discovering this animal head almost guarantees that whoever put this in this pot is also responsible for the strange occurrences happening on the island recently. I'm starting to get a little freaked out, because now this is too much of a coincidence, and the animal head being discovered in a meal itself means that this attack was personal and is meant to serve as a statement, since it was never meant to harm anyone, but merely act to serve a point, that whoever is doing this wants to ruin all relations on this island and wants the absolute worst things for everyone here. At this point, blaming the immigrants would be the easy move and the most obvious one, which makes it unlikely that they would be the ones responsible, especially since them further escalating tensions with the locals in the first place would only make their life on this island a living hell and even more miserable. Why would they do that? Which means that just like whoever killed Creepy Kid, this person was able to confidently fly undetected among the apartment residents and would be someone that we least suspect, as I said before. However, the one thing that doesn't make sense right now is the fact that Kimmy didn't notice the strange taste before when she tried the dish back at Boulder Shoulder Guy's apartment. She only noticed the difference in taste after they brought it to the party. You know what this means, right, folks? This means that someone must have placed the animal head inside of the dish during the time between when the dish was moved from Boulder Shoulder Guy's apartment to the party. And while we don't see who had early access to the dish, it likely would have been one of the three who carried it to the party at one point. Or it could have been someone who would have been in charge of coordinating the iced dessert party in the first place, since they likely would have overseen and come into contact with the dish before anyone else normally would have. We gotta put on our Sherlock and start narrowing down the list of people who had the earliest access to the dish, as this will likely lead us to the person causing all of these horrors. The whole village is horrified and think that the immigrants are responsible for this sick joke, while the immigrants think that Taka is the one to blame, since he had been studying that rock with the strange markings on it and think that the animal sacrifices are because of his devil worship. Taka denies the accusation and says that he found that rock in the underground basement, but nobody listens, not realizing that a horrifying god is already hiding among them. The days go by and the police give up looking for the missing people, thinking they just moved away. But Taka begins to suspect that the piles of dead animals, people vanishing, and the moss are all connected, and he thinks that the person who sabotaged the iced dessert party did it because of Kimmy, and he fears that all of this has to do with the ancient song about the god Kuzululu. Later, Yuri shows up to Kimmy's apartment, and the two decide to get to the bottom of this island mystery themselves. That is a really bad idea, girls. What are you doing? Anyways, the two begin to investigate the locals and the immigrant workers, but soon find out that no one knows anything. Arriving back at home later, they reach Kimmy's apartment door and they see terrifying blood and feathers right in front of it, and they suddenly hear a horrifying scream come from nearby. They rush downstairs and find the locals beating down Boulder Shoulder Guy. Kimmy demands that they stop this, but they mention that they caught him carrying another dead animal with him. Just then, Boulder Shoulder Guy's brother arrives and calms the situation down. The group thinks they know who's to blame, but they don't realize that this is all just a terrifying distraction. Early the next morning, Taka can't sleep and decides to go for a walk just as he runs into Boulder Shoulder Guy's brother, who tells him that because of everything that's happened, he's decided to leave the island before things get worse. course, but mentions that his brother has decided to stay and he bids Taka farewell. But suddenly, Taka notices a rainbow in the sky and runs up to this hill to see the full picture. But that's when he realizes something horrifying. He sees the rainbow point to his apartment, and he realizes that the power that Kuzululu delivered to the sacred site was not on a mountain, but at the location of his apartment, discovering a moss stone hill right under the rainbow. And he thinks that this area is somehow a gateway to another realm. He heads down to the secret door and discovers that this is the spot that creepy kid used to hang out in, and he continues his investigation. Later that morning, Kimmy and Yuri decide to spend the whole day with Boulder Shoulder Guy because they feel bad, as he had just gotten beaten to a pulp the other day. The three then decide to stop by Taka's apartment, but that's when they realize that he's not home, and they realize that something is wrong. Kimmy then thinks that Taka could be in the underground storeroom, and everyone rushes there. But that's when they realize that Creepy Kid's drawings have now been torn to shreds. Boulder Shoulder Guy then discovers the same markings on the wall as he saw on Taka's rock, and figures out that the rock left behind in that room is in fact a key, and the two small girls manage to squeeze through this small door and discover a room filled with ancient text and drawings. Yuri then reads the drawings and finds out more information about the Kuzululu myth, figuring out that the island song that Kimmy was
I should have took a picture of it too, man.
butchering so bad, that song is actually true, but discovers that after the fish people's god died, they came to the island shore in search of trying to find a way to resurrect their dead leader, and tried to sacrifice themselves to the god of this island mountain, in the hopes that the god would bring Kuzululu back. However, the humans already living on the island tried to attack the mountain god, and the fish people gave their lives trying to defend her. Kimmy is terrified and interrupts Yuri, telling her to shut the fudge up before she craps her pants. Okay. This theory about the island myth is horrifying and makes me think that what's going on here has more to do with the past than everyone initially thought. From the beginning, we saw dead piles of fish and animals showing up for seemingly no reason around the island, and more specifically, Kimmy's place. And then on top of that, we find out from Kimmy that the island itself even had their own mythical song from the past that mentions that the sea and its people had something to do with the creation of this island. And now we finally found real-life evidence to suggest that whatever is going on this island has something to do with the island myth itself. Now look at this. The ancient cave picture itself is one of three main types of rock art, which includes petroglyphics, which is carved rock art. In paleontology, one of the ways to tell if rock art is genuine would be by analyzing the rock patina, acquired over centuries of aging, along with radiocarbon dating that is used to determine how old something is by checking on the decay of its radioactive carbon isotopes, also known as carbon-14. Carbon-14 is the longest lived radioactive isotope of carbon, whose decay allows the accurate dating of archaeological artifacts. But given the fact that Kimmy and Yuri are not rock experts and can barely reach the top of a cookie jar above the fridge, this makes me think that these two wouldn't have the slightest clue when it comes to being able to tell whether the cave paintings are real or not, which means that we have to go off the fact that whatever these drawings are telling us is the downright truth. And knowing this means that Kimmy and her squad finally have a vague picture as to what is really going on here, and means that we can use this to predict what horrors might come next, especially if we consider that the dead piles of animals and fish, when looked through a religious lens, could mean that these acts are offerings to a higher power in exchange for something. And this means that what's going on could be happening
I think they're gonna change the big shoulder guy. He might be a sacrifice
because of a religious cult of some sort that has to do with Kuzululu and his followers. And if we consider what has happened so far, this means that it's more than probably likely that all of these acts, the murder, the animal sacrifices, and strange events were committed by more than one person, and likely by a group of people coordinating with each other. And if this is true, then this means that this island has more than one killer snooping around, and means that everyone here is in more danger than they initially thought. Seeing Kimmy scared, Yuri tries to comfort Kimmy and says that she'll protect her no matter what. Kimmy has a vision of soldiers entering this cave, killing a bunch of people in order to get to her, and Yuri suddenly sacrifices herself to protect her. Kimmy is shocked at her vision and tries to keep it a secret as the two head back outside to meet with Boulder Shoulder Guy, telling him that Taka is nowhere to be found, forcing everyone to head back home and call it a day. But Kimmy then heads back to her apartment and goes back to talk to her fetus mother, and she terrifyingly reverses time and space there and then. Later that night, Kimmy then heads to Taka's friend's apartment and hands him Taka's notebook with no explanation as to how she found it, and she suspiciously runs off. Stopping at Boulder Shoulder Guy's place next, she hands him Taka's rock and a letter and tells him to only read it if he's ever in trouble. The old guy starts reading Taka's notebook and discovers that his earlier suspicions about the Kuzululu god and the fish people were wrong, discovering that the Kuzululu people held rituals to sacrifice land and sea animals to bring their dead god back to life, with the help of the island's sky god, a horrifying cosmic being that could manipulate time and space. But when this god's attempts failed, the fish people began to sacrifice other humans until a war erupted and the whole island got destroyed. Taka's notes also reveal that he thinks that the sky god of the past is still on this island, hiding among the residents in human form. And this is why the descendants of Kuzululu's followers came back to this island. The piles of dead animal offerings means that they've already begun to try and bring back their horrifying god one more time. Suddenly though, this old guy realizes that one of the sky god's powers, according to the myth, is moss, a symbol of peace and eternity. And this means that the sky god this whole time is the reason behind the moss being found at the site of the murdered victims, in order to help the victims live on in the afterlife. This guy then realizes that one person sweet enough to do this, and the person who found the first victim, is Kimmy, the girl worshipped by the whole island and whose family has never ever been seen before. She is the secret island god. The old dude is horrified at the news and goes to find Kimmy before the Kuzululu people try to get to her. He reaches her apartment and bangs on her door, but that's when he suddenly gets stabbed by none other than Yuri's dad, who is also wearing glasses. He's a Kuzululu follower. Elsewhere, Boulder Shoulder
Glasses energy too.
Guy finally reads Kimmy's note, and he reads her apology letter to him. He then goes outside and sees moss all over the floor and discovers that the old landlord lady next door has just been brutally murdered by Yuri's mother. She tries to stab him, but he uses his well-developed Oh my gosh, that is so funny, Dom. She tries to stab him, but he uses his well-developed glutes to Chuck Norris roundhouse kick her, knocking her out. And he goes to try and find Kimmy also. Meanwhile, Kimmy tries to find Boulder Shoulder Guy when he runs into Yuri's dad, aka Glasses Guy. And he suddenly charges at her like a psycho and tries to sacrifice her, but Yuri saves her and tells Kimmy to run. Boulder Shoulder Guy then finally shows up and sees Yuri fighting.
How she trying to fight with the dad? The dad can overpower her.
With her dad. But something is horrifyingly wrong as the two suddenly stop fighting and smile at Boulder Shoulder Guy. He's horrified as Yuri then says that she's going to go off to kill sweet Kimmy and tells her daddy to go deal with Boulder Shoulder Guy. Glasses Guy then reveals to him that it was his family that brought in the foreigners, knowing it would cause a disruption to the prejudiced locals, and that this would distract them from what his family were really trying to do. And he charges at Boulder Shoulder Guy, preparing to kill him right here and now. Okay, this is kind of nuts, because by now it's obvious that Yuri and her family are the ones behind everything, and this means that these people are Kuzululu followers, which means that they're crazy as hell. And once again, we should have guessed that the guy with glasses turned out to have the
guy with glasses, energy, black energy,
biggest amount of Glasses Guy energy we have ever seen.
Glasses Guy energy, yeah, that's him.
Boulder Shoulder Guy's roided up size.
So he might be a sacrifice. Big boy gonna be a sacrifice.
Advantage compared to Glasses Guy. I mean, he is huge compared to Glasses Guy, but he still needs to be cautious because 1, he's unarmed, and 2, much likely slower than Glasses Guy. But at this point, that is about all that Boulder Shoulder Guy has, his size, so he has to use it. In law enforcement, there is this rule, the 21-foot rule, which is a guiding principle that states that an average person can cover 21 feet in roughly 1.5 seconds, with the intent for police officers being that they have this much time before they can draw upon their firearm in an active situation. And Boulder Shoulder Guy is likely within that 21-foot rule in relation to where Glasses Guy is standing, which means that he does have time to be able to get to the man before Glasses Guy can use his crowbar. And then basically He-Man the crap out of Glasses Guy enough to either remove the crowbar from his hands or at the very least temporarily disorient him. All that being said though,
well, he bleeding though, leaking out.
Glasses Guy is a follower of a cult aimed at creating a new world order, which means that it's likely to assume that this guy is a total nutjob and insane enough to the point that he's more than likely willing to die for his cause. And he's already murdered people already, which means that Boulder Shoulder Guy has to be willing to do the same. Otherwise, Boulder Shoulder Guy could make a mistake and die right here and now. Glasses Guy attacks Boulder Shoulder Guy and he crumbles to the floor. Yuri's mother suddenly shows up and he tells her to finish the job, but she's too scared. And Glasses this guy tells her that he'll kill her if she doesn't do it, and she listens like the good girl that she is and takes a shot, just as Boulder Shoulder Guy reveals the rock that he was holding onto that had the ancient markings, magically stunning both of them, just as he sees Yuri running after Kimmy. He tries to warn Kimmy that Yuri is actually evil, but Yuri blocks this corridor, and the two girls disappear into this cave. Kimmy then notices Yuri creepily smiling, just as she sees her whip out a blade, and Kimmy realizes that she's about to be brutally murdered. She quickly crawls for her life, and Yuri follows her out of this hole into a room. She thinks that she has Kimmy dead to rights, but that's when Kimmy reveals her mother, this little fetus. Yuri gets confused, just as Kimmy crushes the fetus with her foot, revealing a pile of moss underneath. Kimmy then tells her that she's done with this place, and suddenly body parts of Yuri's mother and her father begin appearing from thin air right in front of her, and Kimmy reveals the horrifying truth about her and this island. Kimmy is the god of this island, the one Yuri and her family of Kuzululu followers were trying to contact. She tells Yuri that she froze this island in time, and that the residents of Housing Complex C have been living in the year 2000 for over 20 years. Tired of the human race, Kimmy has been watching over humanity for over 20,000 years, hoping that one day humanity would be worthy of saving, and that's the reason she froze this island in time. She tried to preserve this island's purity, but thanks to the locals' mistreatment of the foreign workers and Yuri's murderous family, Kimmy has realized that humanity isn't worth saving. Yuri is shocked as Kimmy tells her that it was her powers that covered all the corpses in moss in an attempt to calm the locals into not freaking out. All she ever wanted was for humanity to try and live together in peace. Yuri then freaks out and bows down to this god, begging for forgiveness, saying she'll do anything, kill anything for her. But Kimmy is ruthless and brutally murders and declares humanity as the most selfish race in the universe, right as she begins destroying the entire area. Meanwhile, Boulder Shoulder Guy reaches the surface just as he sees a beam of light consume the entire island. He prepares himself for death and is ready for the horrors, but realizes that he's been spared, and the rock in his hand disappears, the only one left alive on this island.
I thought he was gonna be the sacrifice, but I guess not.
Hey, if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I thought Big Boy wanted to be a sacrifice, but I guess he wasn't, so you already know, man. Anyway, that was good, right? So you already know. Link up in the description below, like.